On today's episode of the Wild Party Podcast, I'm joined by Cherie Hoeger, co-founder and CEO of Saalt, a woman-owned certified B Corporation that is transforming the period care industry through innovation, sustainability, and social impact. What started with a conversation about period product shortages in Venezuela became a mission-driven company, helping women around the world while challenging long-held assumptions about menstrual health. In this episode, Cherie shares the entrepreneurial journey behind building a category-disrupting company, how she turned education into a powerful marketing strategy, what it took to get Saalt onto the shelves of Target and Walmart, and why mission-driven businesses can create both profit and meaningful social impact. Let's get the party started. Welcome to the Wild Party Podcast, where we celebrate the visionaries behind vegan, ethical, and sustainable business. In each episode, we'll dive deep into their journeys, uncovering the why behind their mission-driven business. I'm your host, Stefanie LaHart. Tune in with me for passionate discussions about overcoming challenges, innovative marketing strategies, and the power of using business as a force for good. So whether you're an entrepreneur seeking guidance or a conscious consumer wanting to support impactful brands, join us as we explore the stories behind the businesses that are changing the world for the better. Let's get the party started. And today on the show, I'm joined by Cherie Hoeger. She is the co-founder and CEO of Saalt, a woman-owned certified B Corporation that has transformed a simple idea into a globally recognized, purpose-driven brand. Like many entrepreneurs, Cherie saw a problem that others overlooked and decided to build a solution. So what started as a simple conversation has become a company that is disrupting a century-old industry, challenging our consumer habits that we all know are so hard to break in so many ways, and proving that profit and purpose can successfully coexist. Now, through Saalt's Give Back initiatives, the company has helped address period poverty around the world while building a purpose-driven brand that combines innovation, education, and social impact. So today, we're going to talk about the realities of entrepreneurship, building a brand that truly means something, and some of Cherie's lessons that she's learned along the way. Cherie, welcome to the show.
I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you, Stefanie.
I am so excited to have you here as well. If you have listened to any of my other shows, you might have heard me mention my time machine. You're going to be in my time machine travel, Cherie, because I have good news and bad news that I'm going to start off this conversation with. The bad news is I have hit menopause, so I no longer menstruate. The good news is women are no longer going to have to suffer through what I suffered through when I was having my period, because you solved all that. So you are in my time machine travel, so I can go back and truly enjoy. Or actually, no, it'll have to be a forward time machine. No, how is this going to work? I don't know. I'm just saying, where were you, girl, when I needed you? Because now you're here now. All right, let's get started. Enough with my jabbering here. I know I'm not the first woman that's come up to you and said this, like, oh my God, you solved all of my problems. But here's the thing. I have nieces, I have grandnieces, Cherie, that I can't wait. I can't wait for them to have their period because it's such a whole different world.
Absolutely. And, the number one phrase that we hear from our customers who make the switch to our products is that they're life-changing. And the second thing we hear is, I wish I would have tried it sooner. So, Stefanie, I hear the same thing all the time. I wish I would have tried it sooner myself. And we'll get into this a little later, but I wouldn't take you out of the customer mix because our products do also work for bladder leaks and for daily, sweat and wetness and so forth. So we can talk about that, but we're really trying to support women in all phases of life, from periods through maternity, through postpartum, and, perimenopause and then all the way through menopause because, you do have a little bit of increase of incontinence after menopause. So we talk about all the taboo subjects.
Yes, and we're going to take the taboo out of them because I believe everything is on the table now. We should be open and honest. And I love that social media is finally giving us the platform to do that. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning because we really need to catch our audience up with your backstory of how this all got started. Because I keep reading through all of my research from you and the PR press releases that you had this maybe like monumental one conversation and then Salt was launched. And here we are now in this beautiful business. But we all know that's not true. So take us back, Cherie, to the beginnings of when you were starting to formulate these ideas around period care and what that actually could mean.
So it really did start with a conversation that I had with our aunt in Venezuela. My mom is from Argentina. My husband comes from Venezuela. So I was speaking to his aunt there, and she was describing how she couldn't get anything on grocery store shelves. She wasn't able to get baby needs. It was difficult to get food, let alone things like pads and tampons. And she talked about how she wasn't finding pads for years. She hadn't even seen one in like 5 years. And it really got me thinking about our dependence on this disposable supply chain, these single-use disposables that we have to use every month. And I looked for other products to be able to, solve the problem of period care. And I found reusable period care products for the first time, cups, discs, and period underwear. And, I had all the same questions people had, like, what are these? I've never seen these in my life. How does it fit? That's so big. And I like to look at this disc and say, well, it's not as big as a baby's head. So it does fit in there. But once I tried them out, I was blown away. I thought I was buying them as kind of an emergency situation for my family in Venezuela. And I was just blown away by how convenient and how comfortable they were. And I would forget that I was on my period when I wore them. And I quickly realized, okay, wait a minute. These are actually a better solution. They're a cleaner solution. They're a more comfortable solution. They're a more convenient solution. How come we're not using these as our daily go-to? And that's when I really realized this needs to get out to the world more. And at the time, there weren't a lot of good US-made products. There weren't a lot of products that I could really trust. Some had, silicone fillers from China, a lot of Chinese brands on Amazon, and I had bought several to try out, but couldn't find one that really worked well with my anatomy and one that I could fully trust. And that's when I approached my husband and I said, I think we should make a menstrual cup company. And he's like, a what? I said, I want to get these products out to my daughters. We have 6 children. 5 of them are daughters. I had 5 at the time. Number 6 came along the journey, so we can talk about that. But I wanted products that I could trust, that I could give to them, that I could use for myself, that I would feel good about what was going in our bodies, and something that I could recommend to friends. And that's really how Salt was born.
So, were you an entrepreneur before you had this idea? Had you launched other businesses? Because it's one thing to say, I think I have a better idea, but, to just go to your husband and say, hey, let's launch a business. How did that conversation come about? Are you both entrepreneurs or what was I think your background that gave you the confidence to say, I can just go and launch a business? Or are you like me, just so incredibly naive, you're like, I can literally do anything?
Combination of both. That's the answer. So we had done entrepreneurial ventures before. We did own it's so interesting. So we actually met doing a Brazilian martial art called capoeira. And capoeira at the time didn't have anything from it had, white pants and instruments and so forth that were very difficult to get in the US. And so we developed an online store in the years previous where we were just, bringing these products in and giving them to our students that we taught this martial art to, which was really fun. And so we did have this e-commerce venture. So it wasn't our first go at an e-commerce venture. And then we'd also done a lot of real estate, flipped houses. So for all of our married life, my husband and I have worked together. We're still a husband and wife team. He's a co-founder with me. He's not as much in the scene, but he's so integral to our company as well, which is wonderful because we really need to get the men involved in these conversations to be able to break the taboos around menstruation. So I love working with him as my co-founder, and that experience did help us launch this company. But still, it was an FDA regulated product, right? It was, I told my husband, comically, this is going to be a customer service nightmare because I would answer so many questions from my friends when I would try to talk about reusable period care. But I was a technical writer before. That was where my major was. I was an English major with an editing emphasis, and I, had really focused on technical writing. And technical writing is just taking something that's really ambiguous and big and difficult to understand and making it easy to understand for the layman consumer. And so that's really what this problem was as well. It was an education problem. the products worked amazing, and generally people can get it within 2 to 3 cycles, and the underwear is just even easier. They just want to know how to wash it, and that's it. But we needed to be able to educate through infographics, through how-to videos, through, our instruction manuals and all of these different areas on social and little tidbits. And that's something I could do. So I did have the confidence that I could bring the education.
You're exactly right on all of those points. First of all, the education component, because here's the thing: the insertable, reusable cups is not new. The idea's been around. Actually, I think when I was doing my research, like back in the 1900s, they were already talking about it, right? I mean, it's
1930s, yeah, invented by an
yeah.
American
So
actress named Leona Chalmers. That's right.
right. So, but here's the thing. I remember, like, years and years ago, hearing about other products, and I never tried them. And I started thinking, as I was like thinking about our conversation, I'm like, why didn't I? Because let me tell you, I've always been the rock and roll girl doing the things that other people weren't doing. I'm like, why didn't I even try them? And then I realized, I'm like, you know what? There just wasn't enough of a conversation about it. I didn't know anyone using them. It was before social media. No one was ever talking about them. So they just weren't in my sphere. And I couldn't even tell you where you would have been able to buy one. Because now that I've become like way more environmentally conscious and thinking about these things, I think about all of the waste I've created over my life. And I'm like, wow, it really just came down to the fact that there just wasn't enough good education or marketing on the topic, because consumer behavior is the hardest thing to change. We all know that, and you as a brand owner know that. It's not that your product isn't good, it's how do you get people to change something that they're just used to doing every day into this new thing. 'Cause there's a bit of a learning curve, but once you do it, like you said, I think it's 9 out of 10 women were like, this is way better. Like, why aren't we using this from the get-go? So I'm not even kidding. Like, in the beginning, I was like, oh God, I wish this was a run. I wish I could still try it. And I'll just let you guys know. So they did send me this wonderful gift pack, and I'm holding it up on video here. And I saved them for my girlfriends that are still menstruating because I want them to try it. But I told them they have to give me like feedback on it. I didn't want to open it and like destroy the packaging on them. But anyway, with that said, you mentioned something very interesting. Like, you had this background in e-commerce. So when you then had this idea of, okay, I think I want to create this product, what was the next step then in creating maybe the prototypes for it, or really starting to dive in and figure out what was the market already serving and what gaps were you going to fill in to make the product better or more approachable?
Yeah, like you said, they existed in the marketplace already. And there was a lot of testing. I had tried a lot of cups out, and discs came a little bit later in the journey. I didn't feel like I could find one that really worked well with my anatomy and that I could trust to give to my friends and to my family. And so I really wanted to create the perfect cup for beginners specifically. And we did have a mission and a dream. And one of those dreams was we wanted it to be Target worthy. What I mean is that, Target was really our target retailer because they're more progressive. It's a great discovery channel. People go there to discover new brands. They're very, very aligned with sustainable brands and ones that have, ethical practices and good missions. So we wanted it to go into Target stores, and we'll get there in a minute. But that was kind of our measuring stick from the get-go. And we wanted it to work really well for beginners as a high performance product that also looked beautiful. So it was a journey of both the innovation of the product and also innovation of the brand and the brand voice. So we'll talk about the product first. But what we did is we bought every cup out there. We cut them all up. We understood what made them tick. We understood the firmnesses of it. We realized some things that seemed a little bit counterintuitive, like thicker walls actually help the cup to stay open better. And so it doesn't leak on you, and which is something we've heard in reviews over and over again for people who have tried other cups and tried ours. They said this one has worked the best for my anatomy, and it doesn't leak because it actually stays open. You can actually hear a little pop when you open it. And it's because it stays open and it doesn't fold on you, so that, it ensures that everything is caught in the right place. And, stems at the time on these cups were they had these grip rings that would just irritate. And I said, well, why do we have to have those grip rings? We need the stem. People were actually cutting off the stems. I would read it in Reddits and, different channels where they'd say, I just cut off the stem because it irritates me. I'm like, let's develop a stem that doesn't irritate. And so that was something very novel at the time, a flexible stem that didn't irritate. So we really paid attention to all the details to make the perfect cup. And now, we're the best-selling cup on Amazon, best-selling cup in Target stores nationwide. And we've really been able to achieve that. But at first, it was a lot of that trial and error. And because we're talking about entrepreneurship, when you're developing these cups, we had two sizes, a larger size and a smaller size. And each of these were etched in steel into these molds, these silicone molds, and each one cost $25K. And so you're talking about $50K if you didn't get it right. Like, that was the investment. And if you had to change the mold, well, you just lost $50K and you're investing again. And of course, that's coming from retirement funds, that's coming from your own funds. And so we really needed to get it right. So it turned into 14 different design iterations to develop our first cup, which was our flagship product before we developed our others.
Yeah, and like just touching back a bit on the entrepreneurship, how were you able to maybe like look at the category itself, and then have that conversation with your husband and say, I think that there is room for a new product? Because, again, it's like, we've had these products for at least 20 years. None of them are really, I would say, like, even though some of the bigger names that are known, I still don't see a big, I think overall acceptance. I think it's still more like you have to be, I guess, like, introduced to them. So how did you look at the category and say, I think there is room for this? I think that we would be able to build enough recognition that people are going to ask for this by name or seek this out. Like, what kind of market research were you doing?
That's such a great question. So we saw a big gap in the marketplace. So first of all, at the time, so back in 2018, you had the clean beauty care movement. You had
Mhm.
clean products, cleaning products and household products. And it hadn't really reached personal care. It hadn't reached period care yet. And so we really saw this as an extension of that movement. So there's these macro dynamics happening, right? Where people were turning to, less products with less chemicals, ones that were better for our bodies, that didn't have these endocrine disrupting chemicals, and people were focusing more on their health. The second thing is that we saw this gap in the marketplace where you really had in branding kind of two sets. And that was the older traditional brands where they really had these pinks and pastels and,
Yeah.
women in white dresses frolicking in fields when they were showing it in their advertising. And then you had these newer brands that were kind of relying on what I call blood and body parts, shock value to speak to their customers. And we said, no one's talking to the middle mainstream. We really wanted a brand that just felt clean and elevated and dignified. I was a woman in my 30s at the time, an educated woman with 5 daughters, a mother. I didn't necessarily want my daughters feeling patronized, by the older brands or having the shock value of blood and body parts. That's nobody really loves seeing that. I wanted something that helped them feel dignified when they're on their periods. And I have a lot of opinions as a founder, and I have some pet peeves around these advertisements that show periods as an annoyance, something that's shameful, something you have to hide and tuck up your sleeve. Like, to me, the menstrual cycle is a sign of vitality and of health. And it's just something that we need to understand and work with. And it's a beautiful cycle that emulates the cycles of the earth. And, I wanted to show that showcase with and compare Mother Nature to the beautiful cycles that we have in our human bodies and that power of Mother Nature. So I wanted to showcase that through our brand. So through our imagery, everything really reflected the natural landscape and really had an elevated tone and feel. And I love that you showed our package there, that you have one. But we also wanted, thank you, we also wanted it to be able to open up like a high-end lipstick. And then inside you have the cups that are just on a pedestal and really showcase for the clean, wonderful product that they are. And, we'll get into that, but that's really what got us into Target. It's because of our brand and our voice. The other thing I'll say, because I'm a writer, very much into messaging, matters so much to me, but we made a very deliberate brand voice too. We said, we want the voice to be both authoritative and approachable. Because like you said, you didn't hear conversations around these products. And we knew that the key to unlocking these products is just having real, straightforward conversations without the taboos, without the shame, but also, not treating them with levity either, but just being straightforward. And like a fun friend, they had to, have some cleverness and some fun in there. So we actually called the brand voice your best friend's older sister. And that's because when you're starting your period for the first time, you may be talking to your best friend and maybe they haven't started yet. They don't really know what's going on. You don't always want to talk to your mom, right? That's a little lame. And so that best friend's older sister, well, she's trendy, she's cool, she's in the know, she's savvy, but she's also fun and approachable. So we developed that voice from the get-go, and it's been really, really great in being able to have permission to speak in this space and provide a safe place to be able to talk about it in a fun way, but also very straightforward with education.
I hear that in all of your messaging. I definitely see it, the dignity, everything you were talking about. I'm going to actually call your brand voice the slumber party voice, and here is
Ah,
why. Here's why, okay? So I grew up in a Catholic household. I had 12 years of Catholic school, both grade school, high school. Periods were nothing but shame. There was
ah,
absolutely no conversation. I had two sisters. We never talked about it among ourselves. I can't even
right?
remember what my mother even told me. And she doesn't listen to the podcast, so I could just say this without shaming her. She didn't know better. I mean, she grew up in the 40s and 50s. But here's the
Yeah,
thing, it was nothing but shame. And I remember the night that I learned what a tampon was and how to use it because it was at a slumber party. I
there
was
you
in
go.
grade school. Girls had started getting their period. Unfortunately for me, I was a late bloomer. I had no idea what they were talking about. And one of the girls was going to use a tampon for the very first time. And it was like a big event for us. She goes into the bathroom. We're all in there. We're all trying to figure it out. And Cherie, it was so weird, but it was fun. It was fun because we were all doing it together. And then when my period finally came, I think it was probably 3 years later, I knew what to do. And I was so grateful. So I love that now on social media, we can see that. Like we have our best friends. We have, like you said, our older sisters. We have our slumber party moments. So girls aren't sitting there in this silo of shame thinking, I don't know what to do. My mom can't approach it. School's definitely not telling me about it. And now they have these better options that you're bringing out. So first of all, thank you. Like this is so fun and invigorating to see. And like I said, I can't wait for my grandnieces now, the world they're growing up in, because it's so different for them. They're not going to go through what I went through, which was just, I don't know what's happening with my body, but nobody wants to talk about it. So it must be really bad. But, with that said, now that you are at this point now where you launched in 2018, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You have this really vibrant online environment and audience and everything. Your website is beautiful, but like you said, you're also in some brand retailers, which I loved. So talk a little bit about how you were able to make those partnerships and those connections to get you into places like Target. And I think you're also in, is it Walmart as well?
Yep. Yep. We're
Yeah. And,
also
and
in
obviously,
Walmart.
yeah. So how did you make that connection then to be able to get into these bigger stores?
Yeah, it's such a fun story because like we said, we had Target be kind of our measuring stick. That's the retailer that we wanted. That was our go-to standard. And it was about, 6 months in, we went to a conference called ECRM and it was like speed dating for new brands and buyers. And you had 10-minute meetings and Target had put a 20-minute meeting on our calendar, which was a really good sign because we only paid for like the 10-minute version. And we're like, this is great news. And I'd never pitched a product before, as an entrepreneur. And so we were learning how to do it. And I'm so glad that we had a couple pitches before the target buyer came in. And we were just pitching to kind of these, tired male grocery store buyers who had never heard of a period cup. And it was great because we got to like break all the taboos from the get-go. They were wonderful conversations. And we made so many conversions after that, which was awesome. And it was good to, pump up my confidence for the target buyer. So then in walks the target buyer. And she is this beautiful, very progressive woman, originally from Nigeria, very intimidating. She knew her stuff. And she had been passing around period cups around her office and saying, this is the next big product in feminine care. We need to have this on our shelf. So she was determined to partner with a cup brand at that time. And she was really looking for the right one. And so she asked us all sorts of questions. She picks up our packaging, she's thumbing through it, and she's immediately giving us feedback. Hey, the sizing needs to be a little bit clearer. We need a picture, a thumbnail of what the cup is right there. You're missing that. And so she gave us all this feedback on her packaging. And then she pauses for a moment and she looks at it just really kind of critically. And we're like, I don't know what she's going to say. And she takes a moment and she very nonchalantly says, I've looked at a lot of cups. And I mean a lot of cups. And we're like, oh boy, okay. And she says, I think yours is best positioned to take this mainstream. And my husband and I literally just like did a double take. I think we scared her because we're like, and she had literally repeated the words that we had been saying internally in our meetings for so long. We said, we want this to go to a beginning mainstream consumer. We want it to be target worthy. And this buyer just repeated that to us. And it was such a moment of validation as a new entrepreneur. And then she invited us to go to Minneapolis, which was my first time there at Target headquarters. And we negotiated an exclusivity agreement, and we launched exclusively in all Target stores nationwide in our second year of business, which is kind of unheard of in the category. And really, we a combination of luck and also that deliberateness on how we wanted our brand to be approached and how our packaging looked. And it really made all the difference. And so since then, that opened doors to all sorts of other retailers, a lot of boutique retailers, and then also to Walmart, we've been in other drug and so forth as well. We're on Costco online right now as well. And so it really opened the category up as a whole, and other retailers started taking suit because Target tends to be a leader.
Yeah, it's crazy too. Target does have a lot of discovery options for brands. And that's, just something that we've seen just kind of across the years. It's like they come out with something and then suddenly it becomes more mainstream, which is so great. I also love that you were getting that live feedback from somebody in her position that she could say, look, I know categorization. I know what sells, what works. And you guys are really going to nail it. I mean, you both must have sat there and just be like, are we really hearing are we listening correctly? Because this
pinching
sounds big.
ourselves.
Yeah. You're just like, are you just saying this to everyone? Or, that's pretty cool. That, like you said, that really validates the whole concept. So, with that said, so again, we've mentioned several times, it is something still that people are not always familiar with. There is a bit of education. What are you finding, like some of the feedback that you're getting from your consumers or new audience? Like, what do they first ask you? And then how are you overcoming those hurdles for them so they're more willing to try the product? Especially if they've already tried maybe another kind of cup or disc and they had a bad experience. Like, how are you selling them like this is different?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So we do a lot of education, like we said. We have a lot of the same questions that come up over and over again, where they just ask, what's the difference between cups and discs? And, I'm showing an anatomy model, for those that are listening, but this is just showing like where it's located within the anatomy, where a disc sits higher above, the cup. The cup sits in the vaginal canal and a disc sits in the posterior fornix. And so it's great for people with weaker pelvic floors. It's great for mess-free period sex. Which is amazing. Breaking all the taboos here. Discs are wonderful because it has a flexible basin. So there's different reasons why people use cups and discs. So they ask us those questions all the time. How to wash the underwear, how to use it for the first time. It's so scary, So some ways we tackle that is I tell them it only takes one moment of bravery. Put it outside your shower when you're ready. When you're in your shower, it's a no-risk zone. You have water as a natural lubricant that helps. You can be on your period. You don't have to be on your period. You can try putting the cup, inserting it. All you're doing is you're just folding it down into a figure C, and it gets about the size of a tampon. You're inserting it, horizontally into the vaginal canal, and then you let it pop open. And it just needs to sit below the cervix, which most people don't know where the cervix is. But fortunately, as they become cup users, they start understanding more about their anatomies too. So this beautiful thing happens where it opens up conversations. It opens them up to explore their anatomy a little bit more. And we say, hey, reach up there and figure out where your cervix is. If it hits your first knuckle in your finger, then it's a lower cervix. Like me, I've had 6 children, so I have a little bit of prolapse. So my cervix is pretty low. If, you can't reach it, you have a high cervix. If you can, it's about the middle, then that's about a middle-sized cervix. And it's really about just positioning it under the cervix. So people get a little bit more familiar to understand where that positioning is. And so it's a lot of that education, and we do a lot of things to be able to answer these questions for people. Number one, we're big on TikTok. We do live selling on TikTok. We do these live sessions where people can ask us in real time, all of their questions. It really has helped with the Gen Z consumers. And generally people are in this customer journey where they've heard about cups or discs or period underwear. They've heard about it. They've heard they could be life-changing. They're scared to use it because, like you said, behavior change is just hard. And so it really is just about addressing those doubts in a real straightforward way, and usually with somebody who's a trusted source. So whether it's my voice, someone from our team, or someone who's a podcaster, an influencer, someone else who's tried it, who's talking about it, that's really the number one thing we can do to bring awareness to these reusable products and these ones that are really better for our bodies and the environment as a whole, is just talking about them more, having more conversations. So that's why I'm doing this podcast today. That's why we're having these TikToks that are able to answer these questions, and why we really just try to get awareness out and more education.
It's so true. It's like we have to make it more normalized so it doesn't seem so scary or still taboo in so many ways. And I have to say, I applaud you for using TikTok live shopping because I think it is one of the most underutilized marketing tools out there. So my main business is Boomtown Marketing. So it's all marketing, social media heavy. And I still can't believe after I think TikTok live launched maybe 5 years ago at this point, and that more
Uh-huh.
brands aren't on it because listen, I buy stuff off there all the time. I think it's awesome to be able to have somebody showing the product and then talking about it. And like you said, okay, obviously they're not probably inserting your product on live TV, but to be able to show you like the anatomical model you just showed, like how it works. And let me tell you,
Mm-hmm.
girl, I was already all over your Instagram watching that video over and over because I was even like, how does this work? And I would consider myself fairly knowledgeable about my body at 55 years old, but I was still like, well, where exactly does it go? Right. So I love
Yeah.
that we have those tools now available, like you said, to show women it's not as scary. Like, hey, this is normal. It's normal to stick your own fingers up your body to figure out where things are. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is cool. Like, we have to make it acceptable and cool to know these things. And I think you're kind of hitting all the marks. And in fact, I'll let you know, I did first learn about you through Instagram because I don't know,
Okay,
in
awesome.
my daily Instagram travels, I was served one of your videos because Instagram knows me so well. It knows the businesses I'm looking for. And I'm always just like, people, if you are not marketing your brand on social media, you're missing out. Like for all these businesses that are out there, always like, I don't have time for social media. It's such a time waster. I'm like, listen, you are behind the curve then because this is where people are discovering, where they're learning, and where they're starting to build the brand relationships that are going to carry your business through its life cycle, and I think you've proved all of that as well. So, okay, we've talked about the business side. We need to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. We're going to go into the social impact side. First of all,
Uh,
in the box that you sent me, it came with like this booklet basically. Okay. When I first glanced through it and I kind of thumbed through it, I was like, oh, okay, this is the usual. Like, these are all of our impact reports. But I do sit down and read everything. And I read the whole thing. And when I was finished, I was like, oh my God, how do you have time to run a business and be a part of all of these initiatives? Cherie, this is insane. Like, you guys aren't just like placating out there saying, oh, we're giving 5% to some business. Like, you're starting innovations, like, you're starting like projects across the world. How on earth are you fitting all of this social impact into also running this brand? I mean, this is amazing.
I love that question because it truly is our North Star. Like when we talk internally as a company, we don't have like a profit driver. We don't have like a big number like we want to be $100 billion company. I mean, of course we do. That's wonderful. But it really is tied to our impact. We want to end global period poverty. That is our North Star. And that's very real. It's right in our strategic plan. And the reason why is because I had this realization very early on when I was talking to my aunt in Venezuela and she was describing not being able to get any of these products. And then I started looking into what people were using in other countries. And guess what? Period poverty, which is a lack of access to safe and reliable period products, affects over a quarter of the world. So 27% of the world, or 500 million women and girls, live in period poverty. They can't afford menstrual products. They don't have access to the disposables that we have. So what do they do when they start their periods? Think about it. If you started your period today and you had nothing to take care of yourself, would you go to school? Would you go to work? Right? Would you feel comfortable doing this podcast right now? I'm in this pink, nice chair. If we were afraid of leaking out in public, no, they start to stay home. And what that does is it causes girls to drop out of school. It causes women to miss work and miss out on economic opportunity. And it just leads to a wider gender pay gap and economic poverty. And so when I realized that something literally this big could help keep girls in school and help women provide for their families and break cycles of poverty for generations, I said, this is something I have to do. And I felt a moral obligation to end this period poverty worldwide. I want it for my 5 daughters. I can't imagine what my life would be like without education. And I thought about my daughters and thought, what if their education was stifled because of a lack of period products, which is, hits 50% of the population and is so basic to the human condition. This is something that we could solve. And, I could get on a big soapbox about this. I already do, but I truly believe that reusable products are the answer to period poverty because there are so many companies that will, in good nature, right, with good intentions, donate their single-use disposable products but it literally only covers a girl for a month. And they have to maintain, those incoming products. And as we know, governments can change, funding can change, and those programs can stop. And then you're not, helping those programs into perpetuity. And so when we realized that we could donate these that last 10 years, and we've actually had our products, this silicone, it's 100% medical grade silicone. We've had it, tested by a third party. It could actually last up to 40 years after they did an accelerated aging test, which is the average lifespan, reproductive lifespan of a woman is about 40 years. And so one of these could last their entire period life cycle. And as long as they didn't lose it, it would cover them. And it is truly life-changing for these women and girls. So how do we do it? Well, we partner with incredible organizations. That's really what we do. We're a coordinator, but we partner with really great organizations that have on-the-ground staff that are boots on the ground, and we give them, an initial offering and a donation of products and teach them how to use it. So we don't go with the white savior approach. We let the people who are running these programs on the ground be able to teach the donation recipients. They learn about it, they become great advocates, and then they're able to troubleshoot and educate and help their communities. And then we have ongoing partnerships so that they can have a continuation of products, so not one-off partnerships. And we do this, we've done it in 56 countries so far. We've donated over 160,000 products in those countries and funded 1.3 million days of school for girls, because we have three major pillars, and that's menstrual health, and it's girls' education, and then environmental sustainability. And we also really like to look holistically at how we can help people have a more dignified period. So it's not just donating products. So that's, 60% of what we donate for our allocation. We give 1% back as a certified B Corp, and that's 1% back of annual revenue, not profits. So it's revenue. And that's where it really fuels our impact program. And when we look holistically, we say, okay, is there anything else that's causing a barrier to people having a great period? And so when we learned, for instance, in Uganda, after we had donated products to schools there, that they were still changing their cups out in the tall grass because they didn't have any private latrine to be able to do so. And we said, okay, what can we do? So we built 4 latrines for schools in Uganda that we donated these cups to, where they have 5 private stalls each. And then they have an adjacent holding tank for water. There's no infrastructure, there's no piping. So classes were going, several kilometers to go retrieve the water, but they had no place to put the water. And now they at least had a holding tank to be able to hold the water, and a hand washing station that we built. And so we have these new latrines there. In Nigeria, you have 29 million children who lack access to clean and safe water. And so when we learned that one of the communities that we donated to, the women there and the children there were having to walk 2 communities over to be able to go retrieve water, and they had to pay for that water as well, and then walk back. And of course, that's so many unpaid labor hours, that's so much time of their day, and it most generally affects women, and the burden of carrying water and using water affects women more. We call it the 3 C's, because they use water to cook, clean, and care for children. And so doing that really affects women the most and is able to help with their economic progress. And so we built now 2 boreholes, and these boreholes provide 6,000 gallons of clean water each day for the communities. And guess how much they cost, Stephanie?
$100,000?
$3,500. $3,500, you can provide clean access to water for an entire community. I mean, this is how much most Americans may, spend on like a lavish vacation or, a trip to Disneyland or something, right? Depending on how big your family is. Like, it is not it is within our power to be able to really make changes for people across the world. And that's what we're doing. We're a very small company, but we're a certified B Corp. And people say, how are you making all this impact? And I just say, I see a problem and I figure out what's the first step. What can I do? What can I do to change some lives today? And so we really measure our impact in the lives that we change.
I really, really love that. I'm just going to put you in there with what I call for myself and my older sister, that we suffer from overconfidence. Like, no matter what we see, we're like, I can fix that. I can figure out a way to fix that. And it's a good thing, because you're right. It's like when you see that there are certain things happening in the world, you're like, I think that we could perhaps provide some solutions with that. Let's see where we can take it. And I really love that you're doing the partnerships to work natively with the programs that are already in place and making sure the community is a part of it. Because again, there is that, element of education and taboo breaking that has to happen. Because even here in the US, boys are not taught about menstruation. They do not know what it means. All they hear is kind of like side giggles, like side conversations of women bleed, and they have no idea what that means. And for all they know, we're just like gushing blood like a slasher movie, right? And I really do think it's very important that men start becoming acquainted, like your husband did. Like, this is what it means. This is how much blood loss there is. And this is like how you deal with that every month, because, they don't know. Like, guys don't know. Like, I'm dating guys that are in their 50s that have been married before and have kids, and they still don't know what a period is. And I'm like, dude, like, you had a wife and you had children. Have you ever even seen a vagina? Like, I don't know. That's my own personal thing. Maybe I need to level up on my dating. Anyway, okay.
I love that you brought that up, though, because I always say, people say, how can we break these stigmas? What can we do every day to be able to bring more awareness to these conversations? And I said, the tone that you carry as someone with a period, right? The tone that you carry signals to the other person, how they can speak about it, whether they should speak in tones of shame and hush hush tones as well. And so if you're speaking about it in a straightforward tone, now there are those who are just like, hey, I don't want to hear that. Don't even talk to me about it. Absolutely. You see it a lot more from the Gen X and Boomers generations, the millennials and especially I love the Gen Zers because they're open to it. These girls are the ones who are speaking to their boyfriends and saying, hey, can you go get me pads? I'm on my period. They're so open with it, and I love it. I really think they are the generation that's going to be the wedge to really be able to push these conversations forward and also adopt reusable products, and I'll stand by that. But it is the tone that we carry is what is going to change these stigmas. And these stigmas have stifled innovation in the category for too long. And we really need to be able to get it out in the open to invite more innovation and invite more of these experiences getting out so that we can have both innovation and more research. And I do have to mention really fast that we just funded a study actually around menstrual cup and disc use as compared to tampon use. Literally launched it last week for Menstrual Hygiene Day. And it's so exciting. And it's a consumer study that we funded to be able to really test a hypothesis that we've heard for so long, for over the 8 years of being in Saalt. And we've had customers that write in all the time and they say, my periods have shortened and I have less cramping when I use cups and discs. And we said, is there a way to be able to test that, in a consumer frame? And so we hired a third-party agency to put the study together, and they did. They tracked 188 participants, and over those times, they used it for 3 cycles, and they started with the baseline tampon use, and then they switched to cups and discs, and they measured their period symptoms. They measured, their fatigue and headaches and cramping and so forth, and just overall experience. And 78%, so 8 out of 10 women said that they had less cramping when they switched to cups and discs, and there was 4% that had 0 cramping when they used tampons, and it jumped to 24% when they used cups and discs. And so that actually jumped by 6 times. So 6 times less likely to have cramping when they moved to cups and discs. So this research needs to get out as more as well. And that women's research just continues to be less funded actually in recent years, and it's been underfunded. And so we're really trying to step up as a brand in all areas and say, what else can we do to be able to get good information out there so people can understand what period products they're using and what would be better for their health. And so we're excited about those results.
I am so glad that you mentioned that study, because I was actually just reading it on your website this morning, and I did want to bring it up. So I'm so glad you did, because I was fascinated when I was reading all that documentation about how it could actually make your period so much less, unpleasant in that regards. I was like, oh God, this is just sounding better and better to me. So for all of our listeners that are now out there and just like, God, I want to find out more about this product and maybe try it out. Please tell them where they can find you online. Give us the URL, and let's see who's ready to make the switch.
Yeah, so you can find us at saalt.com. That's Saalt with 2 A's, SAALT.com. We're also on Amazon, and you can find select products in Target stores and in Walmart.
Yes, and I do encourage everyone to go check out their social media, because if you just have any questions like, I don't really understand how any of this works, they've made a video to explain it to you, and I really love that. But before we go, Cherie, I have to ask the question, what's with the name Saalt?
Great question. It's not an acronym. People ask us that all the time. We really wanted something that we could copyright with 2 A's. It was one syllable, but more importantly, we wanted something that invoked this feeling of returning to the natural. And salt is an essential element in our bodies and in the landscape, just like the menstrual cycle is to human life. So the menstrual cycle perpetuates the human race, and I think that deserves kudos, not censorship. And so we love the name salt because it invokes that same feeling.
I love that too. I think that makes perfect sense. So with that said, Cherie, thank you so much for being on the show. It has been so much fun talking to you and learning all about this. And like I said, I'm excited. I'm excited for my grandnieces. I'm excited for women coming up today. I'm excited for me because you know what? I will need some of these period panties too, I'm sure, someday soon. I'm holding up the package. You guys, check them out.
I
Oh,
know.
she actually has them unwrapped.
I do. I didn't even mention this, but I'll just say that the period underwear works for all phases of life. And so it works for sweat and discharge. It works for all leaks. It works for bladder leaks. It works for periods. And that's something that we really want to get out there. It's not just period underwear. It's leak-proof underwear that works for everything and absorbs it all. So I'm glad.
You know
so
what?
you absolutely can use it.
I will be sharing it with my sisters because I will let you know they've both had children and they both leak. So
Yes.
sorry, sisters, just called you out on that one. But whatever, they also don't listen to the show. They're very supportive of me. Okay, with that said, thank you so much. Have an awesome day. And I can't wait to see what's next for you and Salt because I just feel good things are coming.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Party Podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or professional who would like to be on this podcast, please visit boomtownmarketing.com and click on podcast. We believe that every business has the potential to change the world for good, and we want to support our community to help make the world more ethical, compassionate, and sustainable for all future generations to come. And if you're looking to build your business, no matter what level you're at now, request your free marketing consultation at boomtownmarketing.com and click Get Started.